Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Fazbear Entertainment would like you to put your hands together for the one, the only, Freddy Fazbear.
Rewritten! Chica couldn't stop thinking about Vanessa, even though it hurt to do so. Every time her mind circled around to that topic, it was painful, like squinting her eyes shut as she tried to look at the sun through the mall's glass roof. She could still hear little Vanny's voice, back whenever she was a kid and everything was okay. Chica always loved baking for her birthdays. She still remembered her favorite type of cake, red velvet with buttercream icing and purple sprinkles. Vanessa never had any friends, but the whole animatronic family knew her well because of her dad, Victor. And now... Chica wanted to cry, to yell, to do something. All of this wasn't matching right in her brain. There was no way that it was Vanessa she was looking for. No way. She was quiet and a little hot-tempered, but not a scheming villain. It hurt too much to think about. She wanted out. She wished that she could shut down her brain for a while to just... And that's when the hunger returned. Chica was chewing on a screw in a desperate attempt to stop it. It clacked inside of her beak, the little ridges grating against her artificial tongue. The taste of iron was bad, but she couldn't go without it, especially not now. She knew that she didn't need food. She didn't get one scrap of energy from the things that she consumed. She got all the energy that she needed from recharging her battery like the others. But the urge to eat was so strong now, it was driving her crazy. Chica crept up on the counter of a ticket booth, leaning to check beneath it. She straightened up with a sigh, switching the screw from one side of her mouth to the other. The dead mall echoed with all sorts of sounds that made her paint try to peel itself off. Little creaks crawled up through the ceiling, rumbles vibrating through her feet. Unexplained crashes and thunks echoed through the halls in an attempt to gain attention, eventually giving up, realizing that they weren't going to be acknowledged. She still couldn't believe that Vanessa was the one to take Gregory's brother. Surely this was some sort of mistake, or they were only pretending to be her, or some sort of secret twin? Even if she did repress those thoughts, she still had so much more to worry about. Were Roxy and Monty okay? She knew how much they disliked each other. What if they got into another fight? What if Roxy got hurt? Chica whimpered at that, the strain causing another pang of hunger to rack her. She hit herself in the beak, pressure building beneath her shell casing. Focus. She had to focus. This was serious. The sound of a popping balloon echoed through the halls. She stiffened, swallowing the screw a bit early. It was distant, farther ahead. The longer she waited, the easier it was to excuse the noise as an accident. It could just be a balloon that the staff bots accidentally rolled over. Trying to shake off some of the nervousness, she called, "Freddy?" for the millionth time. His footsteps emerged from a store on the other side of the mall's wide hallway. "Yes? Did you find anything?" he asked. Chica shook her head, trying to laugh. "No, I'm all right. I was just checking to see if you were dead yet." Freddy nodded. "Okay. Tell me if you find anything." He ducked out of sight. At first, she didn't complain when Freddy said that he would help her walk. But now, maybe 15 minutes or so later, she had finally convinced him that she could move around on her own. Which was kind of a lie, but a good lie. They had both been wasting time from how slow she was going, and it really didn't hurt too much to walk on her own. Tracking down Vanessa was more important. Every step that Chica took was met with a twang of pain from her new leg, limping awkwardly as she tried to distribute her weight evenly over it. It was too small, leaving her lopsided. And because it was originally supposed to be Roxy's leg, the loose shell of her scaly yellow foot was swinging and clanging around excessively, making her slip and stagger every time she swung too far to the right. But it was fine. She was fine. Perfectly okay. She just had to keep on looking for Vanessa. Her thoughts drifted a bit at that, returning to the same deep pit that had been carved out of her soul. This wasn't possible. It just wasn't. She knew Vanny. Chica latched onto the sound of Vanny's voice back whenever she was little. She had been so happy back then. They had all been. What had happened? Did she do something wrong during those parties? Was it me? The nervous energy grew tighter around her, thoughts of little Vanny growing painful. Chica missed the screw. She immediately felt ashamed as the hunger grew stronger. No, stop. Stop thinking about it. She wasn't going to do it again today. However, as she tried to turn away from the hunger, the thoughts of Vanessa only got worse. She was trapped between a rock and a hard place at this point, with nothing but the empty mall to distract her. Chica was being so stupid. She was an awful person, just awful. Another balloon popped. She halted in her tracks, a disturbance rushing up her body. It was closer now, definitely closer. Just as she was about to say something, a third balloon popped, confirming to her that it wasn't just her imagination. Freddy? Chica called over her shoulder, backing away a few steps. Yes? Did you make that sound? No, she said, running her claws through the feathers of her arm warmers. I think something's going on. Freddy returned to her, both of them falling silent as they scanned their surroundings. They stood near a Y-shaped intersection, moonlight pouring down from above to bathe the three halls in dark blue light. It was almost impossible to read the logos of the different stores, the vague outlines of fridge magnets and t-shirts crowding in on them like trees in a forest. Something was coming towards them. She shuffled closer to Freddy and then relaxed. 3 staff bots rolled into view in an orderly line that curved perfectly around a glistening fountain. When their star-shaped eyes landed on them, they stopped for just a millisecond, their gears shifting. After that, they continued, rolling past with their heads still tilted in their direction. Freddy tapped her shoulder, drawing her attention away from the trio. Deeper into the next hallway lied something that she had never expected to actually get to see in person. Baby's Circus. The second biggest cast of animatronic characters that Fazbear Entertainment owned. And from the looks of it, it seemed like it might be able to take their place if the main cast failed. An entire section of the mall was dedicated to the circus, giving her the feeling that they were staring through a window into an alternate dimension. In the daytime, it would have been a sight to behold. Circular lights twined together around every corner to show off vivid violets, pinks, and golds. Ropes lined with triangular flags pulled back the striped tarps that covered the roof of each individual minigame, bright cyan star patterns speckling the tents like snow. Extravagant signposts eagerly advertised the names of each game in swirling, elegant letters. The ones that she could make out were the Duck Pond, Beanbag Toss, the Lucky Wheel. But no matter how bright it would have been while it was opened, all of that bubbling cheer was now plunged into an ocean of darkness. The lights framing each edge were empty, the neon colors now reduced to a monotone blue, dark shadows gathering beneath the flaps of the various tents. The cartoonish depictions of the characters displayed at every signpost were now frozen into a strained position of forced happiness, the images still grinning widely enough that she could count every tooth in their mouth. No movement, no life, just stillness. A particular feature of the vast carnival ground hooked her attention. In the middle of the big empty space was a carousel that she had never seen before. Velvet ropes strung back and forth to outline where children should wait for their turn, the entire structure taking up at least 10 meters in diameter, hugely oversized compared to what she expected. Orange and pink stripes draped down from the roof of the carousel, the frilly ends tapered with silver trim and trailing of starry lights that were currently extinguished by the night. The center of it was covered in a curved mirror, doubling the amount of space it appeared to carry, giving her an uneasy shudder as she caught multiple angles of the mechanical animals the children were supposed to ride on. She gathered her talons closer to her chest uncomfortably, realizing that it wasn't the usual plastic ponies manning the carousel. Instead, there were pink foxes, blue rabbits, and purple bears frozen in the middle of galloping leaps, dark red saddles strapped to every one of them. Stabbed through their chests were twirling white and pink poles, rooting them between the ceiling and the ground of a mechanism that would hold them in place when the ride began. But there was something about them that felt wrong. It was something about the surplus of teeth in their smiling mouths, or maybe the exaggerated eyes and cartoonish features that didn't match the realistic quadrupedal stance the animals had taken on to fit this concept. It was uncanny, in a deeply unsettling way that she couldn't really give a name to. It took a few moments for her to recognize who those characters were, and why they were oddly familiar. Weren't those the animal characters that were in Circus Baby's band? She did a double take, looking at each individual one, their eyes staring at her through the sheet of darkness that the flowing roof provided. A bear, a rabbit, a fox, but no chicken. She tried to recall if there had been a Chica iteration in Circus Baby's band. She wasn't sure. Circus Baby's entire brand was some sort of adaptation of the traditional cast. They kept some roles but replaced others with original characters. Chica's character just happened to be the one that they cut. She tried not to feel too offended. It was probably a coincidence that they had been led here, of all places. The sound of a popping balloon yanked her back to reality. Both her and Freddy snapped their heads to the right, towards the shadows of one of the various mini-games lining the walls. Balloon pop. It was one of the closest games, between fishing pond and beanbag toss. Rows of multicolored balloons hung on the back wall, the larger ones labeled 10 points and the smaller ones labeled 50 points. Just behind the counter, a pile of sharp darts waited, supposedly put there to be used on the targets. 4 of the balloons had already been popped. Right in front of their eyes, a 5th one popped, leaving behind limp shreds of plastic that halfway obscured the label of how many points it was worth. Chica made an effort to release her claws whenever she noticed that they were tearing into her own feathers again. Freddy moved closer to her, stepping out in front of her like he was trying to block her from whatever was going on over there. Footsteps. So careful, so spaced apart, she barely picked up on them. Her head slowly turned as something moved past them, struggling to process what her ears were telling her. Freddy hadn't been exaggerating. Vanessa really was invisible. In the dark circus, the only hints were the sounds of her footsteps. "Don't move," Freddy whispered out of the corner of his mouth. She didn't. Neither of them did. They waited. They both jumped nearly a foot in the air as a noise swung out from the right wall. It was a strange fast ticking, rolling around and then beginning to lose speed. It turned out to be the lucky wheel, the rainbow colors spiraling with this new movement, the pointer eventually dragging the spin to a halt as it landed on 30 points. What was she doing? Her footsteps slunk away, fading until the circus went still. "Okay, we have to fan out," Freddy said, gesturing outwards to the wide space. "You can take the left, I'll take the right. If you think you know where she is, just start screaming and I'll be there." She nodded, and he separated from her. Chica took in a deep breath, nervously straightened the clip on her feathery fro, and approached the left wall. Their footsteps clunked harshly against the tiles, the echo sending prickles through her outer casing. Her eyes darted left and right, tension crackling like static electricity down to her fingertips. The fishing pond was constructed with a blue tarp at the back, the fishing poles lined up next to decorations meant to look like seahorses and starfish. She swept the tarp aside, reaching into the back where 2 folding chairs were waiting, goodie bags stacked in a corner inside a huge black garbage bag. She reached up and down the entire section, but didn't find anything. Everything was so quiet. Way too quiet. She moved on to the next minigame, Balloon Pop. The googly eyes of stuffed animals watched her as she prodded around. A shiver ran up her back as she touched the strips of plastic left by the popped balloons. A part of her expected for the darts to rise up and try to stab her through the eye, but still nothing happened. Worry began to bubble to the surface again. Was Roxy all right? Even though Freddy seemed confident that they would focus on their mission, Chica had her doubts. It was clear to everyone how stressed out Roxy got around Monty. Chica really wished that she could have gone with her instead, so she could make sure she was okay. Roxy was already really insecure about her looks, and it didn't take a psychology degree to know that she would be extremely upset about getting her eyes ruined like that. What if she hurt herself again? Chica could only hope that she could hold on a little longer. Just as she turned around to continue, she jerked to a halt. She found herself standing in front of a food stand, one that was full of fluffy ice cream. Even though the food itself was packed away into storage, it was still advertised to her around the edges of the logo. There was crisp mint green, snowy vanilla, rich chocolate. She closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. Chica couldn't remember the last time that she had eaten real food. But no matter how much her body wanted her to give in, she pulled against it. She couldn't do it again tonight. She would get in trouble. Whiny little freak, a voice whispered to her fat-ass pig. The hunger wasn't real. She wasn't starving like her body thought that she was. It was all just a reaction attached to her taste testing feature. She wasn't built like her friends. They could all eat if they needed to participate in a birthday party, but they didn't have a sense of taste like she did. And, by extent, they didn't feel the hunger that she felt. She knew that it wasn't real, but it felt too real to ignore. She couldn't do it again. She would get in trouble, so much trouble. She forced her feet to unroot themselves from the floor, pushing herself onwards to the next stand. Even though she was facing it, Chica had to blink and rub her eyes multiple times, struggling to focus. Don't think about it, just keep going. She still hadn't identified what she was looking at. What was she looking at? Come on, focus! A wooden board, colored to look like a clown, a hole where its mouth was. A beanbag toss, yeah. She reached past the board, straining to keep her head from turning back to the ice cream, moving on as fast as she could to put more distance between her and the tempting imagery. A sudden clattering nearly made her feathers fly off of her. She snapped around, looking to the other side of the circus, where Freddy was. A stack of bright blue cups had been knocked over, without the use of the softball that was meant to be thrown at them in exchange for points. She thought that Freddy had accidentally done it, but from the look on his face, it was clear that the answer wasn't that simple. Chica backed away, the anxiety squeezing her harder and harder. The urge to eat was returning with it, an uninvited guest. No, she couldn't do it again. She was being bad. She didn't need food. She didn't deserve food. She moved past beanbag toss to duck pond. The only movement was the bobbing of the ducks on the surface of the tub's water. That and... Her eye was caught by something shiny on the floor. She took her eyes off the suspicious ducks, finding it to be a plastic token. For several long minutes, she didn't budge an inch. She scratched at her beak, swallowing nervously, a loophole presenting itself to her. No, she couldn't. Or could she? Did that count as garbage? It was discarded, even forgotten by the staff bots. Maybe she could eat it. Why not? It wasn't very large. It wouldn't make the hunger worse. This would help. She was sure that it would... She was down on top of it before even finishing that thought, watching herself numbly as she picked it off the floor and popped it into her mouth, grinding at it with her beak. The cracking noise that it made in her ears was harsh and unwelcome, but she kept on chewing on it, not knowing what else to do to distract herself. This is fine, she reassured herself. She wouldn't get in trouble for this. This counted as trash. She was allowed to eat trash. Only trash. Slow down, calm down, she told herself as she straightened up again. Everything was okay. She was okay. She'd be fine after this token. She wouldn't want anything more. Her false stomach ached at her. The fear increased. She could feel it coming. The shape of the ice cream taunted her in her head, and she realized with a flutter of embarrassment that she was staring at the ice cream stand again. No, she told herself firmly, marching on. She wasn't going to do it again tonight. She didn't deserve it. It was revolting. She had to stop being so selfish. Find Vanessa. Find... Footsteps clunking behind her. Every spring in her body was wrenched tight. She bit down on the coin so hard it nearly broke, backing away. Freddie seemed to have noticed the same thing on his side of the circus. Then she shook her head. Do something, you idiot. You're trying to find her, not run away. Chica limped forwards, reaching out, fear pounding loud in her chest, too loud, too loud. She swept her hand over the different counters, checking every corner. Nothing. Someone was watching her. Chica whimpered, eyes darting around, finding nothing. She knew it wasn't nothing. It was never just nothing. She was so hungry and so scared and so sick. She couldn't focus. She wanted to eat. It was getting bad now, really bad. Chica was about to chip her beak if she kept on biting the coin. She wanted to swallow it to get the scraping over with, but then she would want another, and she couldn't get another, and... Why was she thinking about food so much? It was humiliating to live with herself. She wanted to cry. She searched mini games up and down, trying to hurry through the ones that offered her lollipops or cotton candy, knowing that Freddie was there. He was so close, she would never be able to get away with it. A pressure built in the back of her head, making it harder to think. Think of something else, anything else. Was Roxy okay? She really wanted to check on her. Roxy was probably feeling really bad right now, both about her face and about Monty. Freddie didn't really understand the extent of Roxy's hatred for Monty. Nowadays, he was too busy with his various jobs to visit them, and even if he did have time, the new rules meant that none of the animatronics could enter each other's areas. It hurt to realize that she couldn't think of the last time they were allowed to talk to each other. What had happened to Vanessa? What had they done wrong? She was such a good kid. She remembered countless times where they would try to help her make friends, introduce her to new children. She had always been so nice. It hurt her mind to think about her, unable to recognize what was truly happening. Why? Why was this happening? Why did Vanessa want to do this? Was it me? And then she swallowed the coin. Her chest was throbbing. She couldn't focus. She couldn't even see what she was touching. She was so afraid. It was a cold rush of emotion that kept on hitting her again and again, like a cliffside held in front of a storming sea. She just needed a few more things to chew on. Then she would be done, really done this time. No funny business. She'd put her foot down. She would prove that she could control this. She was better than this. She found an empty chocolate wrapper and ate it before even bothering to see what brand it was, finding discarded receipts and price tags, eating them all. They tasted terrible, just like any other piece of trash that she was forced to consume. She had been hoping that this would make the artificial hunger subside, but instead it just kept on growing with everything that she got down. She didn't just need little pieces of trash. She needed to be full. She needed it now. Her claws wrung together so tightly they were scraping the paint off the backs of her hands. Why was she like this? It didn't make any sense. She was a robot. She didn't actually need food. Why did it hurt so bad? When she came face to face with yet another food stand, one that tempted her of corn dogs, she clamped her hands over her eyes, feeling more pathetic than ever. Bad. She was being bad. Disgusting, selfish, fat-ass pig. She staggered away from the mini-games, overwhelmed with the sense that she was being chased, the urgency swelling and swelling, taking up so much space inside of her, and felt like she couldn't breathe. Whoa, Chica, what's wrong? Freddy appeared out of nowhere, startling her to the point that she almost fell over. He held onto her forearms to keep her steady, and she kept her head down, unable to bear looking at him. She was making him feel bad. She had to stop. Freddy had enough to worry about already. She was making it worse. Bad, selfish moron. I'm okay, she squeaked out, clearing her throat and trying again. I'm fine, I'm okay, I promise. I'm just... Everything stopped when the two of them made eye contact with the animatronics on stage. Shock pulsed in waves up her body, but she slowly recognized that those faces couldn't truly see them. It was Circus Baby's band. The stage was held past the carousel, proud and bright, only revealing itself now that they were further into this area. The names of each character came back to her as her eyes passed over them, most of them preceded with "Fun Time" to separate their identity from the main cast. On the far right stood a gleaming pink fox, one of their arms elevated as if they were in mid-song. Funtime Foxy. Beside them hung Ballora, standing gracefully on pointed toes with her elegant arms curved above her head like a dancing ballerina. The conjoined figure of Funtime Freddy and Bon Bon waited on the far left, both of their faces pulled back into a beaming smile. One of Funtime Freddy's hands held a microphone, the other disappearing into the torso of Bon Bon, a tiny blue rabbit. The place where they connected replicated the setup of a ventriloquist act, although both the puppet and the puppeteer were their own separate entities. And, of course, at the very front was the ringleader, Circus Baby herself. She resembled a young girl with a frilly scarlet dress fanning out around her waist, her ginger hair gathered into two pigtails on either side of her head. Her glittering blue eyes stared blankly into space, a silvery microphone held up to her closed mouth. Despite the fact that a Freddy model was traditionally the lead singer of the band, it was clear that, instead, Circus Baby was the one that took that position in this iteration. She realized that she had been right before. There didn't seem to be a Chica model in the Funtime cast. All of them lacked the layer of fur that Chica and her family bore. Their pastel-colored shells were glossy and pristine, as if they had been polished only 5 minutes ago, displaying different shades of white, pink, and indigo. Despite their attentive positions and wide grins, the alternate cast only stared straight ahead. They did not react to Chica and Freddy's presence at all, not even the slightest blink. Chica actually hadn't gotten to see the Funtime animatronics yet, even though she knew of them because of the company's history. A while ago, she had asked a few of the technicians if she could go and meet the secondary animatronics in the rest of the mall, but they unfortunately had to burst her bubble there. Apparently, all of the animatronics besides Chica and her family weren't advanced enough to be considered sentient or self-aware. They said something about how the method that they used to make the main cast was too expensive and risky to try it again on background characters, and that these extra robots only had pre-recorded responses and a few jerky movements to give them the illusion of being real, something that a child's imagination would go nuts over. So, despite the fact that it was eerie to see all of them there, at least they couldn't truly watch them. Maybe half a minute later, she realized that she was still staring at them. Or, more specifically, she was staring at the tiny bunny mounted on Funtime Freddy's wrist. Bon Bon. She glanced at Freddy. When he saw her watching him, he looked away from Bon Bon, pretending that he was examining the golden trim that lined the stage instead. For some reason, a part of her had assumed that they would replace Bon Bon with a small puppet version of Monty. But nope. That little bunny was probably the only sign that Bonnie had ever existed at all in the Pizzaplex. At that thought, a tight stinging began in her throat, and she quickly tried to move on before the emotion could catch up to her. Chica leaned to look past the band, seeing something that gave her a sliver of relief. The velvet curtains were parted near the back, showing a door labeled in bold red letters, "Employees Only." "I'll check back there," Chica said, already breaking away from Freddy and moving towards the stage. "Wait." Chica stopped just as she put her foot up on the first set of stairs. She looked back, frowning unhappily when she saw the concern in Freddy's eyes. "Are you sure you're okay?" Chica nodded quickly, saying, "Yeah, I just think Vanessa could be hiding back there, you know?" She tried to laugh, but the sound felt awkward. Freddy looked like he was about to say something more, but he eventually dropped his hand, nodding. She hefted herself up onto stage, the floor of it making a metallic thunk that didn't match the dark wooden boards that it was painted to look like. Baby's band didn't show any signs of noticing her, completely powered down for the night it seemed. Still, it was unsettling to pass them by, making her feathers puff out nervously as she carefully made her way around them, trying not to brush against the glossy shells. Now that she was on eye level with them, she noticed that they were connected to the ceiling by a sturdy cable. It was painted black to blend in with the shadows surrounding them, made of hefty pistons and chunky gears. She reasoned that those cables held up the characters while they moved during their show, so they wouldn't have to be built with the mechanisms that would support a true bipedal stance. It was probably a lot cheaper for them to pretend to walk than actually walk. Chica hurried past the blank stairs, pressing her claw to the keypad to unlock the employees-only door. Once she was inside, she breathed a sigh of relief, taking a few moments for her eyes to adjust. The darkness slowly revealed the complicated tangle that was hidden from the audience's view. She saw flashes of a few tools, some chairs, something that looked like a bed. She felt along the wall until she found the light switch, flicking it on and squinting blearily around. The place she found herself in resembled parts and services, but it was much more opened up with no vault doors at all, combined with several other rooms that stretched as far as they could to the back. Piles of cardboard boxes covered the entire right wall, the ceiling low enough that her feathery crest brushed against the fluorescent lights, something that looked like a forklift with a harness waiting only a few feet away from the door. Probably used to drag the animatronics in for repairs, she thought. Near the back was a huge flat bed with a bright light craned above it, intricate tools lining the walls above tubs brimming with extra parts. Chica noted that there weren't any restraints on the repair bed, unlike the version that she was familiar with in the original parts and services. Further off to the left gathered what looked to be a break room, a few folding chairs surrounding a table with a pile of napkins in the middle. And right beside a water fountain was a vending machine. It was beaming brighter than the buzzing fluorescent lights, the neon highlights of it surrounding the thing in a sphere of white. Food, real food. Rows and rows of spicy crimson-colored chip bags, stacks of sugary delights, sparkling soda and fruit juice. It hypnotized her. The starvation grew unbearable. She slammed her eyes shut after several paralyzed moments, clamping both hands around her beak to keep it closed. She wasn't supposed to. She would get in trouble. The higher-ups had been clear. She was only allowed to eat garbage. You are not hungry. It's not real. Stop being selfish. You don't deserve it. But her manager wasn't here. No, walk away right now. Sirens were going off in her head as she tried to back up, but she was quickly blocked by a chilling metal surface. The employees-only door had swung shut behind her without her even noticing. She frantically fumbled with the handle, but stopped just as it cracked open again, standing there at the edge. Pain kept digging deeper and deeper into her stomach, forcing her to reconsider. She closed the door. If anything happened, Freddy wouldn't be able to hear. No, she tried to banish those thoughts. couldn't keep living like this. It wasn't ever just one bite. She knew it wouldn't be. There was a reason she was restricted like this. She knew what would happen. She could already see herself going through with it, proving her manager right. But did that even matter? A little voice kept on telling her. She was struggling so much against it, and for what? If it's getting this annoying, she might as well just give in and get it over with, right? Hunger pains bit down on her harder, like a snake had snared its jaws over her stomach, twisting and writhing inside of her. How long had it been since she'd eaten real food? Weeks? Months? A year? She didn't remember. She deserved a snack at this point. Everything was so terrifying right now, making her feel like she was being strangled. It would make up for all the stress of tonight. It would help her relax. It would... She was upon the vending machine before realizing that she had given in. For all of the animatronics, their stomach hatch was the only part of their body that was built to be opened regularly, meaning that there was no pain to stop her from doing this, even though an action like this would be excruciating on any other part of her body. She was able to fish the token back out without problem, closing herself up and shoving the little trinket into the slot with trembling claws. She pushed in a random pair of numbers and a letter, and waited. She shifted her weight from one foot to another, claws tearing several feathers from her pink arm warmers. She wasn't doing it again. This was just a snack, a tiny snack. She would be able to control it this time. It wouldn't happen again. She wouldn't do it again. That promise repeated itself over and over in her head like a broken record as she watched the vending machine whir and clank, taking its sweet time. It hurt. Her stomach hurt so bad. That was all that she could feel anymore, the constant constricting pressure growing razor sharp, completely taking over as it became excruciating. She just wanted to eat, just a little bit. She wouldn't do too much again. She wouldn't do too much. The dispensing slot clattered. She already had her claws deep in the item, snatching it up, throwing it into her beak. It popped open, the taste of cheesy chips casting her away from the world. That was all it took to set it off. It went down too fast, the brief cheer now replaced by an infinitely stronger need. Chica touched her head to the glass of the machine, taking in several deep breaths, the desperation tearing her up. Her manager was protecting her from it. She couldn't have another meltdown. If she didn't eat at all, she couldn't waste food ever again. If she wanted to binge, she had to do it on garbage, only garbage. But she wanted to eat something that wasn't covered in mold. She wanted to chew on something that didn't make her want to gag. Hungry, hungry, so hungry. She had to control it, she had to suppress it, she had to ignore it. But she didn't know how. Chica tried to turn away, tried to leave the sphere of white light, everything in her head fighting against itself. She'd erase it afterwards anyway. In the end, it wouldn't matter, right? She didn't deserve to get better anyway. She was an awful person. Being trapped like this was all too natural for someone like her. Why fight against it? Chica's eyes searched the ground. No more convenient tokens. The desperation peaked, the world fading away. The idea was horrible, just horrible. Feel guilty about it later, after it's over, the little voice instructed her, blocking out everything else. She cocked her arm back, gathering all of her strength, and punched the glass as hard as she could. The barrier shattered so easily against her broad hands. Now she was grabbing the food in fistfuls, the world sweeping away as she was pulled into the trap. She gathered everything that she could hold and fell down right where she was in the pile of broken glass, tearing into it. All of the terrible hunger pains that she had endured were finally released, relaxing and stretching to fill her up. She needed it, she needed all of it. She wanted every ounce of food to pour down her throat and chase all the pain away, even for just a few minutes. Chips, soda cans, sugary candies, all of it burst over her tongue, and she somehow tasted none of it. She tried to get herself to stop. She was full now. It was enough. She had to control it. She had to... Her body wasn't listening to her. She couldn't stop. She couldn't stop. She was crying now. There were no tears. There never has been. The animatronics weren't given tear ducts. Couldn't cry in front of children, her manager said. But the reflexive whimpers were still twisting up through her throat as she chewed and swallowed, knowing that this was wrong, knowing that she couldn't keep doing this, that it was hurting her. Her body wasn't listening to her. She had to be full enough to sicken her. It would help, it would help. She had to find the happiness and demand it to come out. Stop, please, just stop. Chica devoured everything that she could reach. The only reason that she ever stopped was because there was nothing left in the vending machine. Only then did she fall back, curling up with an agonized groan. It was almost there, some weird, mutated version of happiness. But she was only allowed one moment like that. And then it all fell apart. Chica gasped, clutching her belly in pain, staring blarely around, then up at the vending machine. She had done it again. Regret came for her, just like it always did. It tore away all the lies that the first voice had been telling her, the other one replacing it. She burned beneath it, everything imploding in on itself. Why did she do this? Why was she so weak? Why did she think that she deserved to eat it all? She knew that it wouldn't stop. Her manager really was right about her. This was why she didn't deserve it. She was a disgrace, a disgusting, revolting disgrace. Nausea surged up through her insides, overpowering her. It was all too much, too heavy. She couldn't bear it. She had to get rid of it. Chica bent over, jabbed a finger down her throat, and made herself throw up. The ghastly gush of bile splattered down onto the floor, spilling out of her until the awful pressure was gone, leaving her completely empty. Chica coughed, trying to hide away from the revolting amalgamation piled in front of her. Shame. That was all that she felt now in the hollow shell that she had been left in. Exhaustion and shame. Jeremy was right about her. She was disgusting. I'm okay. I'm okay. She clamped her beak shut with both hands, sobbing freely now. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. Chica couldn't physically cry, but as a substitute, the lights in her eyes began to flicker on and off, making her surroundings flash like a strobe light as she tried to get a hold of herself. It was the only way that some of the stress could leave her, her lack of tear ducts making the process dizzying. She lied down in defeat, staring dully at the fold-up chairs surrounding her. What was she even doing here before all of this? Vanessa. The real world slowly faded back, heavier and darker than ever before. After all of this, she had only been able to escape its horrors for maybe a few minutes. Chica didn't want to get up yet. She was weak, she was tired, she wanted to quit. And then, finally, Freddy's voice forced her to act. Chica? Her eyes snapped open. He was knocking on the employees-only door that led backstage. She cleared her throat, carefully swallowing down the remaining goopy clutter of her meltdown. Yeah? Are you okay? Did you find Vanessa back there? I was getting worried from how long it was taking. Faking it came easily, now that she was returning to reality. Oh, yeah! Chica laughed back at him, surprised at how smoothly the response came. No, she's not back here. Do you need help? Freddy asked. The door creaked, beginning to open. Cold shot up her back like a bullet. No, I'm good, I'm coming, Chica called, jerking her body into movement. Hang on. She rolled over, sitting up, her elbows shaking with the movement, dizziness teetering unsteadily in her. She got up shakily, bits of glass shards falling off of her as she leaned back against a water fountain. She quickly tried to clean it up with multiple rolls of towels, getting most of it into a nearby trash can, but had no time to do anything more. Freddy might come in at any moment, wondering what was taking so long.
Disgusting, greedy, fat-ass pig. What is wrong with you?
A numb, empty fuzz took over her mind as she drifted towards the exit, arms hugged close, claws running feverishly over her arm warmers. She felt absolutely revolting, like some crushed piece of litter in a muddy ditch. Grease and salt and syrup dug its nails deep into the crevices of her plating, grating against her endoskeleton and leaving the joints gritty like wet sand. Chica wanted to scrub herself down until the paint came off. She put her hand on the knob, but then hesitated. She reached up and touched her neck, in the empty spot where the collar used to be. She was already grimacing in anticipation, knowing how furious her manager would be to hear that she gave in and ate things that she wasn't authorized to eat. She was painfully aware of the recording in her eyes, reporting every movement to a tape. "I'm okay," she began to tell the voice automatically. "I'm okay. We're all okay. That was the last time. I promise for real now. I won't do it again. I'm sorry." Chica wiped the crumbs off of her beak and left the evidence behind, opening the door. She tried not to open it very wide, hoping that her body blocked view of what had happened inside, but soon realized that Freddy wasn't even watching her at all. He was turned away, completely rigid, looking at... Every character in Circus Baby's band was watching them. Their bodies hadn't moved an inch. Their heads, though, were craned backwards, fixating their glazed eyes on them. The sight petrified Chica for several long seconds, expecting for them to surge forward and attack. Freddy slowly looked back to her, the disturbance clear in his face. He moved closer, watching the robots for a few more seconds, and then eventually whispered, "We should go." Chica nodded in agreement, and Freddy led her carefully past the band again, having to sneak between Funtime Foxy and Circus Baby. To her relief, the robots didn't change their position even as they got down from the stage. The angle that their necks were bending was uncanny, but she honestly didn't care very much. She still felt too stunned to even process what was going on around her. A whirring noise made both of them whirl around so fast they almost knocked each other over. It was just a staff bot. It approached at a calm pace, the star-shaped eyes focused on a point past them, completely ignoring Freddy and Chica and instead heading up on stage via a ramp on the side, entering the employees-only room. She realized with sinking guilt that it had seen the mess that she made through the walls. It was going to clean it up. She knew that it wasn't alive and couldn't judge her for this, but still, the shame burned hot beneath her shell, like she was trapped in the oven. Nobody had to know what happened, she told herself. They'd never have to worry about it, ever, because she was okay. Chica's insides thudded, the nervous energy returning with a feeling of dread. She was right back where she started. After all that, she was still afraid of everything that had happened and was about to happen tonight. She had been holding on to a tiny hope that maybe it was worth it if the despair after the purge dragged her down enough to numb the terror. But it was only building again as she remembered how many lives were at stake, the guilt only growing sharper and sharper. She had been so stupid. Why was she thinking about food so much? This was so selfish of her. Gregory's brother was in danger, and all that she could think about was her own problems? Another reason to keep her dumb mouth shut, she told herself. Chica? Freddy's voice startled her, snapping her back to reality. They were still standing beside the rows of chairs in front of the stage, watching the backs of the robots' heads. Or, at least, Chica had been. Freddy was looking at her. Oh crap, she had to fix her face! She attempted a frail smile, trying to brighten up. "Yeah? What is it?" "You look kinda shaken up. Did you see anything in there?" he asked. "Okay, good. He didn't know. He thought it was something else." No, it was nothing. There's nothing in there." Chica moved past him with a bit of a stagger, escaping the awful scene as fast as she could. Wait, are you sure? She made the mistake of glancing back over her shoulder. Something flickered behind Freddy's eyes, his ears drooping low. Disappointing, disgraceful. Look at yourself making Freddy feel bad. Unacceptable. She straightened up, forcing the smile on brighter. Yeah, I'm fine, really. He watched her for several long seconds, each one feeling like an eternity in hell. She became hyper-aware of every movement in her body, trying to straighten into a more collected position, forcing her claws to let go of the ragged sinews of her feathers. Smile, keep smiling, make it go up into your eyes, no wrinkled brow, relax the shoulders, come on. She had to try harder, be happier somehow. If she just stopped being the world's most annoying daughter, maybe Freddy wouldn't be so sad all the time. Eventually, Freddy sighed and began to move past her, saying, Okay. We should move on. I don't think Vanessa is here. He was immediately proven wrong when the stage roared to life. One after another, the lights that ringed the curtains blinked on with bright pinks and violets, noise exploding from the frozen animatronics like a grenade going off. They snapped their heads back around to face forward, their shells bathed in black light and faintly glowing against the shadowy backdrop. Welcome, one and all, to the magical land of Baby Circus! Circus Baby began to speak into the microphone, her voice amplified and echoing through the empty halls, eyes angled down to the vacant chairs in the audience. My name is Circus Baby, the namesake of our wonderful little slice of the Pizzaplex. It's so nice to meet all of you and see all your happy faces ready to hear our song. Immediately, it was clear that something was off. Circus Baby wasn't looking at Chica and Freddy, and even though her mouth was moving, it didn't quite look like she was actually having a conversation with them. Hello, ma'am? Freddy waved his hand, trying to get her attention. Can you understand us? The show will begin momentarily, so please gather round and get your popcorn ready, because this is going to be a wild ride. Circus Baby continued, still not acknowledging the fact that she was speaking to nobody. Freddy sighed, dropping his hand, both of them realizing the same thing. The technicians were right. These animatronics were non-living objects, their speakers only playing a pre-recorded script for them. One that would have made a lot more sense if she was actually in front of a crowd of little kids. Why did they start their showtime protocol? Chica asked, even though it felt a little silly to expect Freddy to know what was going on. Did we accidentally trigger something? Both of them looked around, wondering if there was some sort of sensor that they had tripped. They hadn't actually stepped into the audience seats. They were only standing beside them. So, why was... Let's see if the rest of the band is ready. Circus Baby went on, while Chica and Freddy backed away a few steps. Foxy, are you good to go? The Funtime Foxy animatronic, who had been placidly smiling until then, responded with a chipper, Ready and waiting. Oh, I'm so excited for today. Are you and Bon Bon good to go? Circus Baby asked over her other shoulder. Yeah! Funtime Freddy practically shrieked. We're all set, right, Bon Bon? Yep, Bon Bon chuckled. Let's see if we can do better than last time. Hey! Funtime Freddy snapped, glaring at the tiny rabbit on his hand. I hate this. Chica cringed uncomfortably, noting that Freddy was making a weird face too. And who turned them on? Still, the cheesy routine continued. Ballora? Circus Baby asked, leaning to look up at the ballerina. Ballora nodded, giving a gentle smile. Of course. I'm sure you'll all do great. Let's keep it together for the kids, all right? I see some very happy little faces in the audience, so let's give them our best shot. You said it! Circus Baby agreed, turning back to the non-existent spectators. I want to get out of here. Chica whispered, her voice trembling as she glanced back at the rest of the quiet mall. Freddie agreed with a nod, but before they could turn away, the song began. Circus Baby counted them all off as the music crept in. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. They shut down. Chica and Freddie stopped, glancing back up at the stage. The silly music had come to a halt, the band frozen in time before even singing a single line. Circus Baby had her mouth open over the microphone, Funtime Freddie and Bon Bon doing the same with their own. Bellora's hands were halfway raised above her head, ready to begin dancing. Funtime Foxy had an arm elevated again, poised and ready. The sudden stillness made a shudder creep up her back, glancing back to the mall's endless darkness. It all seemed so much deeper against the lights of the stage, like she was staring up at the night sky, endless space stretching out for an eternity. And then Vanessa's voice came to them from every direction at once. Just thought it would be funny to show this to you two. This family is healthier than yours, and they aren't even real. She broke off into uncontrollable wheezing laughter after that, as if the two of them were the funniest thing that she had ever seen in her entire life. It stung. It stung quite a lot, actually. Each little giggle sent deep, hot waves of shame rippling through her. Freddie's ears began to droop again, staring down at his feet, blinking rapidly as she kept laughing at them. Her laughter, it was coming from everywhere at once. It rebounded off the walls, amplified in a way that made her think that she was using a megaphone or talking through... Wait. She looked up and finally noticed the speakers lining the edge of the ceiling. She was talking through the mall's announcement speakers to confuse them. When Freddie took a step back, Chica reached out and touched his arm. He gathered himself, refusing to look at her, instead tilting his head back to say loud and clear, "Vanessa, wherever you are, we're here for James. Please, if you just give him back, we won't have to use force on you. I don't want you to get hurt." Vanessa chuckled a little bit more at that. "You all still see me as a little kid, don't you?" "No, Vanny, why are you doing all of this? You have to have a reason," Freddie said, his desperation leaking through. "What did we do?" She paused, giving the echoes time to fade. Chica still had no idea where Vanessa was. She wasn't even sure if they were in the same area. "Huh. You asked that last time, too," Vanessa said, seeming fascinated all of a sudden. She flattened out into a condescending tone, telling them, "Since then, I've gotten a little bit more space to gather my thoughts, so this time I can say with certainty what exactly it is about you guys that pisses me off so much." Several things in that sentence pulled Chica into a disoriented spiral. What? Last time? A cold shiver traced down her spine. She tried to remember what she might be talking about, but only saw static. "It's not just that your family's falling apart," Vanessa explained. "It's that you're letting it happen, Freddie." Behind them. She was behind them. They spun around, alarm bursting through them both. She hadn't used the speakers that time. Vanessa really was here with them. Chica wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. Heavy footsteps. Towards the floor of the carousel bent as a heavy weight hopped up onto it, the trailing starry beads dangling back and forth as Vanessa's invisible figure moved around the various saddled animals. Noise rang out loud enough to jar them both, the shock making Chica's bad leg give up. Freddie quickly caught her, helping to support her as they stared out at the carousel. Just like the animatronics on stage, it had been spontaneously brought to life, beaming like a bonfire in the middle of the mall's chilling darkness. Golden light flashed off of every surface, the draping velvet fluttering as the entire thing began to spin. Black light lit up in flashing rings on the structure's ceiling, reflecting off the plastic animals as they began to move. The twisting pink and white poles guided the foxes, bears, and rabbits up and down as if they were galloping along carelessly in the night. Each saddle was empty, wide grins plastering on every cartoonish face, completely ignorant to the dead, black space that they were floating in. But even with the racket of it starting up, she was still certain of what she had heard before. Vanessa was on the carousel. She drew back in apprehension, trying to keep her balance. Just seeing the spinning ride was dizzying, and her nausea still hadn't completely worn off. But Freddy was starting forwards, so Chica followed, slowing down once they reached the edge of it. The carousel spun before them, different images melting together like icing on a spilled cake. They waited, neither knowing exactly what the plan was, squinting to try and pick out any hints that her presence might leave in the environment. Even if there was something to give her away, the movement of the ride's animals was enough to disguise it. "Do we have to go up there?" Chica asked. "Yes, if we want to catch her," Freddy said, keeping his eyes on the spinning colors. "Do you think you can do this?" As a reflex, Chica replied immediately, "Yes, of course," before really understanding what she had just agreed to. Her eyes flicked back and forth between the different leaping animals, the strain already making her woozy. She swayed unsteadily, feeling like the ground was tilting beneath her. "Come on, focus." They hovered there for a few minutes, trying to judge where they could jump on. Everything kept ringing louder and louder in her ears, the dread boiling inside of her, plastic tails and heads flying past. Freddy leaped before she was anywhere near ready. Both of his arms clamped around one of the poles that held the ceiling up. He cried out in surprise at the change of motion, the platform rocking back and forth with his sudden weight. By the time the ride made a full cycle back around to where Chica was standing, he was anchored in place and gesturing for her to follow. The darkness pressed up behind her like a wall, her eyes zipping back and forth as she tried to pick a spot, the colorful blinking lights streaking past her like comets. She began to try and time it in her head. Okay, now. At the next now, she jumped. Chica snagged both hands around a pole before her feet even touched the platform, the whole thing wobbling as she steadied herself. She squeezed her eyes shut tight and hung on for dear life as the world settled around her, Freddy's warm hand helping to keep her in place. When she peeked again, her surroundings were blurring past her in a dizzying swoon, the nausea rising viciously inside of her. Don't throw up, just focus." Freddy's paw left her shoulder, and she looked out to the inner rim of the carousel, trying her best to lock onto any clues. Freddy was already carefully shuffling his way around the different plastic animals, always keeping at least one hand on a pole to make sure he didn't go flying. And Chica wanted to do that too. She wanted to grow determined and begin searching in the other direction, but several minutes later, she found she was still clinging to the pole. Everything was moving so fast. The force of the ride was pressing her down, making her have to lean far to the left, her arms beginning to ache as she struggled to keep a hold of it. She didn't feel very good. She felt like she was going to be sick again. When she closed her eyes, it only made it worse, so she was forced to just stare around at the blinding colors and try her best to break out of the paralysis. She had to let go of the pole. She had to start moving. Freddy would notice something was wrong. The fear of that finally kicked Chica into motion. She slowly loosened her grip and then snapped it tight again as the floor beneath her jerked. Freddy was doing the same a couple of meters away, turning to look back at her. That movement hadn't been from them. It felt like a slug was trying to slither its way up her throat, but she swallowed down the feeling, shaking all over as she took one trembling hand and reached for the next pole. One step after another. Don't throw up. She was fine. Everything was fine. "Vanessa?" Freddy asked, having to yell over the cranking of the ride. "You can't hide forever. Please just get off this thing and talk to us." "No, I'm already talking to you. You're just not listening," Vanessa said. Her voice was definitely on the carousel, swirling back and forth from wherever she was standing.
Everything is getting so much worse, but you just don't care enough to notice. Chica here is probably the best example of that.
Chica went rigid, the colorful lights of the carousel getting farther away. Oh, no, how would she? She's been suffering quite a lot, and you still haven't noticed, Vanessa continued. It's almost impressive. Chica tried to speak, but the wind had been knocked out of her. Now, Freddy was leaning over, watching her with concern, opening his mouth to ask,
No, I'm fine. What are you talking about?
She tried to laugh, but the sound was all wrong. She couldn't look at Freddy. She tried to appear focused on her footing instead, reaching for another pole and grasping onto it to pull herself further. See, Vanessa said, her voice so close, surely only a few inches away. Even she thinks nothing is wrong. Freddy, you are so bad at keeping track of your family, you didn't even notice that Chica had a mental breakdown only 5 minutes ago.
No!
Chica cried out, staggering away from the accuser. Her bad leg buckled and she struggled to regain her balance, gripping onto a nearby saddle and pulling herself back up, continuing to deny,
No, I'm okay!
She tried to laugh, but the sound was all wrong. She couldn't look at Freddy. She tried to appear focused on her footing instead, reaching for another pole and grasping onto it to pull herself further. Both of them were now completely distracted from their mission, forgetting that Vanessa was even there. The closer Freddy got, the worse Chica felt. She knew in the back of her head that she wasn't acting right. She wasn't supposed to be so frantic, but she didn't know how to assemble her words at all. Everything was just scattering in a panic as she tried to push it away. What is she talking about? Freddy asked, before addressing the invisible figure. Vanessa, what are you talking about? Sure, Freddy, you asked if she was okay, Vanessa went on, not directly answering. You were almost there. Your 3 remaining brain cells almost fired a signal between each other to notice that something is wrong with her, but you just accepted the 1000th I'm fine and didn't do anything about it. Vanessa laughed again, the sound grating against her ears like rusty nails. I mean, how stupider can you get? The carousel teetered back and forth as if Vanessa was changing position, but neither of them were looking for her anymore. Chica's stomach clenched again and she fought down a gag. The dizziness was getting worse, spinning and spinning around and around, all of it too fast, way too fast. If Chica actually needed food to survive, she would be long dead by now, Vanessa said, violently dragging the secret out into the open. Don't you care about that? What type of a father lets that happen in his own home? Freddy's mouth opened and closed a few times, touching Chica's arm to try and get her to look at him. What? What is she talking about? He asked. She snatched herself away from him, clinging to the pole like a lifeline, her gaze fixated on the floor, the lights blinking in her eyes like police sirens as she scrambled to gather her thoughts. Think of something. Think of a really good lie right now. She's lying, Chica burst out. She's lying. She's just making stuff up so we get confused. We gotta catch her. She desperately searched Freddy's expression for signs that he believed her, but it just wasn't working anymore. Rainbow colors flashed off of his plating, and she began to see double, fighting to not heave with the horrible sensation of the carousel speeding up. It's not just Chica you're failing, Freddy, Vanessa said, her voice carrying despite the noise. Roxy and Monty are the same. In fact, because they're so messed up, they've already been caught. It was like being punched in the gut. Bright lights flashed too close to her face, everything smudging together, getting faster and faster. Yep, you heard me right, Vanessa continued proudly before they could really process that. I already have Monty and Roxy. You really shouldn't be this surprised. I mean, come on. Not only did you split up the party, but you put Monty and Roxy on the same team. When have either of those things ever been a good idea? Freddy, did you really think that they will put their differences aside because teamwork makes the dream work? You have way too much faith in them. Don't listen, Chica squeaked out, looking back. She gasped. The LED lights in Freddy's eyes were flickering on and off, despite his attempts to maintain his composure, the despair on his face dragging her down even lower. "We have to get her. Just look. Keep looking," Chica said, pulling on his arm, trying to get that face to go away. "Don't listen to her." Vanessa was only getting louder, connecting herself to the announcement speakers to rise above Chica's trembling volume. "You are the face of this company, Freddy. Everyone expects you to be good and perfect and to set an example. Your family's outward appearance is probably the only thing you care about." "What? No," Freddy argued. "No, I just don't want them to get in trouble." "And is that it? You just want them to act happy around children?" she challenged. "No," Freddy said, his voice quavering. I've been trying. I just don't know what to do. I don't want them to get scrapped." A drawn-out sigh muffled his response, and she moved on like he hadn't said anything at all. "I have been the behavior tracker for years, and you people just get worse and worse the more I learn about you." Freddy made a noise that sounded like a sob. Seeing him like that deeply disturbed her, enough that she felt paralyzed. Neither of them could move. It was like she was holding onto the edge of a cliff, trying not to fall, the purples and pinks and yellows assaulting her eyes, the world outside becoming a black storm like they were on the inside of a tornado. "Your family is dying, Freddy," Vanessa told him, so loud, so loud. "Your one job was to protect and take care of them, but you couldn't even do that. I don't think Bonnie would be too proud of you." All at once, the carousel shut down. A burning after-image enveloped Chica's vision, turning everything bright red. She fell forward as the carousel's motor lost speed. Her head cracked sharply against the shell casing of one of the galloping animals, her metal scraping against the platform harshly. She grabbed onto the nearest pole, hearing the same happening to Freddy. All she saw were streaks of yellow and vermilion, like she was staring up at a meteor shower, the after-image of the ride's movements blinding her. Everything was still spinning and teetering and wobbling back and forth as the whole world slowed down, lowering to a jog, then a walk, then a crawl. Eventually, the gears in the carousel screeched to a stop. And then she heard the electric prod. The noise of it delivering a shock was unmistakable, as well as Freddy's choked scream. And then, with a thud, she heard nothing else. Chica coughed, every inch of her shell stinging as she scrambled to try and get up, still seeing popping lights as she tried to adjust to the sudden darkness. "Freddy?" Chica cried. No response. Her eyes adjusted gradually, the world returning to her bit by bit. The twirling pole she was clinging to, which appeared black and blue in the dark, the rounded gray edge of the platform decorated with extinguished stars. The gaping mouths of each minigame, everything dead and quiet, watching eagerly as she tried to regain her bearings. And then she saw the dark heap of fur lying within arm's reach, unconscious and still humming with the leftover energy of the rod. Her gasps for air rang loud in the dark, everything rushing up through her head like her thoughts were spewing at the top, the dizziness pursuing her even though she was now at rest. Black light from the stage continued to reflect pale pinks and muted violets, coating everything in a dark twilight haze. Chica clung to the pole like a half-drowned rat for what felt like forever, wishing that she would just wake up, that this nightmare would end already. But then, Vanessa's voice returned. "Why do you do this to them, Chica?" Chica opened her beak, but could only whimper. She tried to get up, but her bad leg crippled beneath her, and she slid back down to the floor, her whole body shaking uncontrollably as she fought down the urge to vomit. She stretched a trembling talon out to Freddy, feeling his soft fur. She doubled over with another sob, eyes darting around frantically, unable to find any hint of Vanessa. She
He was coming for her any second now. I'm fine, Chica stammered pitifully. No, nothing is fine. Behind her, Chica snapped her head around, but still couldn't find anything. In the dark, watching, waiting. Why do you keep lying? Chica scrambled to her feet, falling off the edge of the carousel, hitting the tiled floor hard. Pain kicked up her hurt leg as she tried to get up, her knee twisting and letting her crash down onto a nearby bench. Get away, everything was screaming at her. Get away! Why do you keep lying to them? The carousel bent down, then tipped back and forth as if Vanessa had gotten down from it as well. Do you want to pretend there's nothing wrong, too? Chica gripped the back of the bench, trying to limp away, everything around her melting down. Please, just leave me alone, she cried. Vanessa's clunking, heavy footsteps kept approaching her, closing in. You've got probably the most expensive problem of all of them. Sure, Monty destroys things, but he only takes them from the scrap pit. Sure, Roxy is a bully, but the kids still laugh at her for that, so for them it's quality entertainment. But you, all you do is waste food. Stop. It was like she was being crushed under a mountain. Hot waves of shame poured over her like steaming tar, weighing her down heavier and heavier. Please stop. You are nothing but a burden, both on this company and your family, Vanessa told her. You just lie and lie and lie and then keep smiling like nothing happened. Do you really think that's making everyone else happier? No, it's not. The only way to make them happier is for you to disappear. Chica collapsed against the closest row of audience seats. She turned her head to look back at the stage, the black light bathing the frozen alternate cast in neon colors. This circus right here really is the ideal setup, Vanessa said, right over her shoulder. Without you, your family could have been whole again. Chica didn't have the willpower to fight back. The last thing she saw before being struck on the back of the head was Circus Baby's band and how much they were smiling. Entry 3, January 3rd, 2062. We are still making. Entry 4, January 18th, 2062. Even though Subject 2 wasn't successful either, I am really glad that Subject 1 has someone to talk to now. Subject 1 had been getting more and more depressed as time went on, even though we did our best to keep him stimulated and comfortable. But with Subject 2, he finally has a friend that understands his situation and can relate to him. Subject 2 has brought the life back into Subject 1, and has even helped him laugh about their situation instead of constantly focusing on the negatives. I'm not sure how he did it. I've been trying to do that for the longest time. Maybe I didn't do it right because Subject 1 doesn't necessarily like me, so he would be naturally resilient to my attempts. But I'm just glad that he's happy again. Hopefully, Subject 3 will be the last one. The awakening will be flawless this time. Subject 1 and 2 will understand why we needed to do this once we are successful. We owe everything to them. Victor Miller. Hey guys, sorry if the end was a little emotionally rough. It was mostly Vanessa saying the absolute worst thing you could ever say to someone with bulimia just to get her to freeze long enough to get caught. Also, sorry this chapter is late. I was trying to redo it like I've redone, like, what was it, chapter 15, I think? And I got strep throat at the worst possible time and wasn't able to voice act the redone version, so yeah. I'm planning to post the next episode 2 Fridays from now, but last time I promised that, something crazy happened, so if I'm late next time, just know that I'm going to do it as soon as possible. I'm still going to aim for 2 weeks from now, but I can't predict the future, so yeah, that's it. Bye. Hope you guys enjoyed. Woo!